Hello there, very good evening. This is the weekend edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Martin Satyanesan for the News First, where the people come first. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for this evening.
Protests across Sri Lanka demanding gas and fuel. President appoints 4 ministers. SLPP decides to support Prime Minister.
ඒකමතිකවම තීරණය කරා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමාට සහයෝගය දෙන්න.
අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා වුණාම ඒක පොහොට්ටුවේ ආණ්ඩුවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ.
What is the Prime Minister's plan to revive Sri Lanka's economy?
දැන් ආපහු පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන් තව මුදල් මුද්‍රණය කරන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒකේදොත් ආණ්ඩුවේ සේවකයන්ට ගෙවන්නවත් බැහැ.
No alternative than a government without Rajapakses. Sajid's response to the Prime Minister.
Now those stories in detail. People were seen in queues to purchase essential goods during the curfew window of today. There were queues for gas in many parts of the country. The island-wide curfew has been imposed amidst these problems.
People were in long queues at Malay Street in Colombo to purchase cooking gas today.
What are they doing? We voted for them. They have deposited the money in various places and fled. Their assets must be confiscated. It is bad to send these rogues anywhere.
People gathered outside the Slave Island police station after they were informed that gas would be sold.
The Kotehena police distributed gas from 2 lorries yesterday. They informed those who couldn't buy gas to go and buy them from the Slave Island police. We came here at 3:30 in the morning. Now the police say that it would only be sold to residents of Slave Island. These are innocent people.
Residents blocked the road from Slave Island to Colombo Fort until 2 p.m. today. Army officers were called in to maintain order. $63 gas cylinders were left after being sold to residents of Malay Street. They were sold to those who gathered near the Slave Island police station. People were in queues since last night outside a gas dealership store in Paliagoda to purchase gas cylinders. They blocked the road after being informed that gas wouldn't be sold until Wednesday. People held a protest at the Kathiranawatha junction in Matakulia demanding gas.
I haven't had gas for 6 months. Gas stocks didn't reach this area. Where can we go and buy it? We have to stand in queues everywhere. Look at my slippers. They have worn out.
Army officers then requested people to make way for the vehicles. A protest was also held blocking Armour Street near the clock tower this morning.
Sri Lanka is facing a shortage of fuel that is prompting longer power cuts. When curfew was lifted, people stood in queues at filling stations to purchase fuel. Senator Sena Naika of Newsfirst visited a queue for fuel at Union Place in Colombo today.
The curfew that has been imposed since last night ended this morning, and Sri Lankans across all walks of life from every area flocked to every filling station in their neighborhood, and with the hope of pumping fuel to their vehicles. Now, this is Union Place. This is the situation in Union Place. It's 6 p.m. The vehicles that are here right now have been waiting here since 2 p.m. The vehicles that have been waiting since morning got their fuel at about 1 p.m. and these vehicles, as you know, the queue is moving forward but at a very slow pace.
A 40,000 metric ton consignment of diesel imported under the Indian credit line arrived today. But the Ceylon Filling Stations Owners Association says fuel supply has dropped island-wide. Queues for fuel were seen in many areas including Colombo.
They're sending us everywhere, but there's no fuel. I have to pay 600 rupees as daily rent for the three-wheel I am using. I didn't run hires these days.
Queues for fuel were seen in the suburbs of the Western Province, including Madiwala and Kohuwala. In Matara, people were in queues since this morning. Filling stations in Anuradhapura didn't sell diesel today. I run a funeral parlour, but it is not categorized as an essential service. But the service that I provide is important, just as an ambulance service. I can't keep the bodies at the parlour. Many times I have felt helpless. I haven't been able to buy fuel.
There are many farmers in queues with cans. We are helpless. We can't make our complaints to anyone. Politicians should do what is needed, but that's not happening. Why are we left to suffer like this? Is it because we're innocent, helpless people?
In Kantale, there were long queues for petrol and diesel. The area has faced a fuel shortage for several days. Long queues were also seen near filling stations in Kandy.
We are sick of this. They impose curfews and close down the country. There's no fuel. We have no way of surviving. We can't do our work. Those in power are living a luxurious life.
This was the situation in Kurunegala. A similar situation was seen in Polonnaruwa. Long queues for fuel were seen in Dambulla as well.
What are we to do with these cans now? We don't have diesel or petrol. They keep fooling us. What kind of government is this?
Meanwhile, a train carrying fuel had derailed in Rambukkana. This train was transporting 37,400 gallons of petrol and 5,800 gallons of diesel when it had toppled en route to the Kandy railway station. The prevailing shortages of gas, fuel and medicine are results of the dollar crisis in the country. In an interview with the BBC, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe spoke about resolving these issues.
I will somehow ensure there's sufficient food, fuel and medicine available.
And how? How will you do that?
We'll have to look for help from outside and talk to them.
If you don't get the help from India, Japan or other countries that you haven't mentioned, then you're saying that there could be a hunger crisis by the summer.
There won't be a hunger crisis. Somehow we'll find food.
somehow, but how if you don't get
After I
enough
speak
funds?
to them, there will be help coming from there. They won't allow people to starve.
Speaking to BBC Sinhala, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that more money will have to be printed to revive the country from its economic crisis.
ඔබතුමා කියනවා මේ අර්බුදය විසඳන්න මුදල් හොයාගන්න ඕනේ කියලා. කොහොමද ඔබතුමාගේ බලාපොරොත්තුව තියෙන්නේ මුදල් හොයාගෙන කටයුතු ටික කරගෙන යන්න?
IMF එක කතා කරන්න වෙනවා. අපි නියම වශයෙන් ක්‍රියා කරනවා කියලා දැනගත්තොත් අනෙක් රටවලුත් අපිට උදව් කරයි. ට්‍රිලියන 3ක් මුද්‍රණය කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් අද ට්‍රිලියන 3 අවසానයි. අපිට දැන් තියෙන්නේ ආණ්ඩුවේ බිලියන 100යි. දැන් ආපහු පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන් තව මුදල් මුද්‍රණය කරන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. මේකේදොත් ආණ්ඩුවේ සේවකයන්ට ගෙවන්නවත් බෑ.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඔබතුමාගේ ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්තියත් වෙන්නේ මුදල් මුද්‍රණය කරලා ආර්ථිකය
නෑ මගේ ඒක නෙමෙයි. දැන්ට කරන්න සිදු වෙනවා. මම කෙරුවත් පඩි ගෙවන්න බැරි වෙන රජයේ සේවකයින්ට.
අරගලයේ සිටින ජනතාවත් මහ ජනතාවත් කියන්නේ ඔබතුමාව මේ තනතුරට පත් කළේ රාජපක්ෂවරුන්ව බේර ගන්න. ඉදිරි රාජපක්ෂවරයෙක්ට ඊළඟට ජනාධිපතිවරණයට පාර කපන්න තමයි ඔබතුමාව මෙතනට ගෙනාවේ කියලා.
ඔබ හිතනවාද තව රාජපක්ෂ කෙනෙක්ට එන්න පුළුවන් කියලා ජනාධිපතියා මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක් වෙන්න?
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appointed 4 new ministers today. The president's media division says the ministers were appointed to maintain stability in the country until a full cabinet is appointed.
The 4 ministers who took oaths at the President's house in Fort today: Professor G.L. Piris as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dinesh Gunawardena as the Minister of Public Administration, Home Affairs, Provincial Councils and Local Government, Prasanna Ranatunga as the Minister of Urban Development and Housing, Kanchana Vijayasekara as the Minister of Power and Energy. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa met with lawmakers of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna at the President's house today. It was the first meeting among the parliamentary group since Ranil Wickremesinghe took office as the Prime Minister this week. Former Minister Basil Rajapaksa and the police chief had also attended the discussion.
There were about 100 parliamentarians. Some didn't come due to security concerns. What I have heard is that the Deputy Speaker can be appointed easily. We also discussed that it is easy for the Prime Minister to win a majority in Parliament.
පුළුවන් කියන තත්වය මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ගේ සහ ඒ පැවති සාකච්ඡාවේදී තාම පැහැදිලි වුණා. ආණ්ඩුවේ බහුතරය ඔබතුමාට දැන් තියෙනවා කියලා ෂුවර්ද? දැන් තියෙනවා. බහුතරය අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම තියෙනවා. අගමැතිතුමාට කියන්නේ කොන්දේසි මොනවා හරි දැම්මද? නෑ කොන්දේසි කියන්නේ ඉතින් අපි අපේ විතරක් නෙවෙයිනේ. දැන් පක්ෂ කිහිපයක් එකතු වෙලා තමයි ආණ්ඩුව අරගෙන. අගමැතිතුමා කියන්නේ එක්කෙනයි.
මෙහිදී ජනාධිපතිතුමා විශේෂයෙන්ම
The Inspector General of Police was brought for the meeting. He promised that a team would be appointed under his deputy to arrest those involved in the unrest within a week.
සතියක් ඇතුළත සියලු දෙනා අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න බවටත් පොලිස්පතිවරයා ප්‍රකාශයක් කරා.
එතකොට දැන් එතුමා පසුගිය කාලේ මහ බැංකු හොරා කියලා කියපු ඔබතුමාලම දැන් මේ පත් කර ගැනීම ඔබතුමාට හිතෙන්නේ නැද්ද යම් කිසි දියක
පට්ටු වාද ભેද අපි පසුවට විසඳගමු. මේ දේ කරන්නේ වෙන මොකකටවත් නෙමෙයි මේ රටේ ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් මේ රටේ තරුණ පරපුරේ අනාගතය වෙනුවෙන්. නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායක ධුරයට යම් නමක් යෝජනා වුණාද සාකච්ඡාවේදී? ඔව් නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායක ධුරයට
We proposed the name of Ajit Rajapaksa to the post of Deputy Speaker. It seems like we won't be able to hold the vote on the 17th. There's a technical issue there. If someone feels that we don't have the majority, then the burden of proving that falls with them. There is no tradition under our parliamentary model or the British parliamentary model to show that the Prime Minister has a majority.
බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය පාර්ලිමේන්තු සම්ප්‍රදායවත් නැහැ. අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා වුණාම ඒක පොහොට්ටුවේ ආණ්ඩුවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka says the new Prime Minister and Cabinet should be appointed in a way that it builds the confidence of the people. In a statement, they said the new Prime Minister should win the support of all parties by going beyond a simple majority. The BSL said Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe should form a consensus government with the consent of all political parties in Parliament as soon as possible. It added that the new government should take steps to meet the needs of the people.
The Samagi Lawyers Association says the appointment of the Prime Minister is unconstitutional.
The Article 43(3) of the Constitution is very clear. The President, in his opinion, has to appoint the person or call upon the person who commands the confidence of the House to form a government. Now, The constitution is very clear on that. So when the Prime Minister resigns, then the President has to call upon the person who in his opinion has the confidence of the House. The President cannot deal with the conditions, he cannot agree or disagree with the conditions, he has to appoint the person in his opinion who has the confidence of the House. Now, as of today, a cabinet has not been appointed. As of today, there has not been a show of confidence in Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. If a person having one seat in Parliament is appointed as Prime Minister, it's constitutional, it's bounded upon that person to produce 113 signatures. That's the way it is done. So this move is totally unconstitutional, and what Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe has done is violate the constitution and basically put the constitution in the dustbin.
Arjun Mahendran, who was a friend, was brought to Sri Lanka from Singapore to commit the bond scam. At the 2020 parliamentary election, the SLPP said Ranil Wickremesinghe was aware of it and that he was involved. So today we have two questions. Are the rumours about Ranil Wickremesinghe false? The second is that the Rajapaksa family is likely to face a very serious problem in the future. Did they appoint Ranil Wickremesinghe hoping it would resolve their problems?
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has written to opposition leader Sajith Premadasa inviting him to form a non-partisan government that goes beyond traditional parliamentary politics. He had said the only option left to save the country from the current crisis is to take a new political journey and to restore stability in the country with the strength and commitment of everyone. In response, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa said the solution to the greatest economic and political crisis in history is to find a solution based on the people's voice. He said the people are clearly demanding a government without the Rajapaksas in addition to other demands. The opposition leader said the party's stance has not changed from what has been outlined in the two letters to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Some media outlets create rumours that Samagi Jana Balawegaya parliamentarians are planning to join the government and that they will accept ministerial posts tomorrow. Let me be clear that Samagi Jana Balawegaya parliamentarians won't betray their party, the supporters, the people, their conscience or parents for mere ministerial positions. Samagi Jana Balawegaya parliamentarians won't sell themselves. Samagi Jana Sandhane Mantri Kandayam Mudalata Wikinene naha.
4 parliamentarians from the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress and the All Ceylon Makkal Congress, who showed their support to the government by voting for the 20th Amendment, met with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today. They had said they would extend their support to the opposition leader in future.
Parliamentarians are expressing various views on whether Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and the government holds a majority in Parliament at the moment. Let's take a look at the Constitution. There are two ways in which a Prime Minister can be appointed in our country. The first method is that the President can appoint a parliamentarian whom he feels commands the majority of the Parliament as a Prime Minister. The second method to appoint the Prime Minister is through the people's vote, that is through the parliamentary election. Now, in the case of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, it was President Gotabaya Rajapaksa who appointed him as the Prime Minister. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which backed the President into power, they form the government, their main party in the government. They held their first meeting today after Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe took oaths this week. Now, more than 100 MPs took part in this meeting, and the SLPP, what they have said so far is that they recognize Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister and that they have decided to support him. However, contradictory views are being expressed by parliamentarians on the legitimacy of the Prime Minister's appointment and whether the government has a majority in Parliament as well. Now, there are two ways in which the Prime Minister can show that he commands the majority in Parliament. Now, next week's parliamentary sittings are going to be crucial for this reason. Now, Ranil Wickremesinghe has become a Prime Minister from a party that holds only one seat in Parliament, that is the United National Party. He must prove that he has a majority. Now, during next week's parliamentary sitting, the government can either go for a vote and show that the Prime Minister has a majority, or else the opposition can request the Speaker to conduct a vote and to show that the Prime Minister has the majority or that he commands the confidence in Parliament. Now, let's not forget that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna came to power by criticizing the mistakes committed by Ranil Wickremesinghe when he was Prime Minister during the previous government. Therefore, this vote is going to be very crucial to decide what their stance is. Now, the second question is whether the government holds a majority in Parliament at the moment. There's going to be a very interesting vote that is expected to take place next week. Now, the post of Deputy Speaker remains vacant at present, and usually under parliamentary standing orders, the procedure is that the vote for the post of Deputy Speaker must be held at the first parliamentary sitting since the post becomes vacant. So it would be interesting to see how this vote takes place, because if the government puts forward a nominee, the opposition is expected to put forward another nominee from their side, and then a vote will be held to elect the post of Deputy Speaker. And this is going to be crucial in determining whether the government holds a majority in Parliament. However, if we go back in past, things have worked out differently in the past. Now, we might recall that on the 19th of December 2001, there was a time where Parliament did not have a Deputy Speaker. However, Ranil Wickremesinghe at that time struck up deals between the parties to ensure that parliamentary sessions continued without a Deputy Speaker being appointed. It is the same individual who is the Prime Minister at the moment as well, which means that there is a strong likelihood that this can happen. However, we are not sure as to what will happen at next week's parliamentary sittings, and that is why next week's parliamentary sittings are going to be crucial. Either way, the vote to show that the Prime Minister commands the confidence of the Parliament and the vote for the post of Deputy Speaker is going to be the litmus test that sort of exposes the true stance of the parliamentarians who can be seen expressing various remarks across the country to the media.
Protests opposite the President's office are continuing for the 36th day, despite many changes in the political spectrum. Protesters said they will not call off the demonstration until President Gotabaya Rajapaksa steps down.
The change was not created to provide relief to the people. Ranil has always protected the Rajapaksas and vice versa. Why did they appoint Ranil to the post of the Prime Minister? It is not because there was no other option. He has no power in Parliament, so the Rajapaksas can use him as their pawn. We have been protesting for the past 36 days, calling for the resignation of the government led by Gotabaya Rajapaksa. A new government must be formed. A chance must be given to form a people-centric government.
Some intellectuals held a discussion at the Gotha Gogama protest site today. Another discussion was held on Sri Lanka's transport sector. A school was opened at the Gotha Gogama township today.
Listen to the people's voices. They are demanding a leader who can represent the people's sovereignty. The new Prime Minister represented one seat of the national list in Parliament. Is he the Prime Minister that people asked for? The government has disregarded the people's struggle.
A group of cyclists, including former cycling champion B.J. Sumanasekara, arrived at the protest site today. CID officers arrived at the protest today as well to investigate the recent attacks at the protest site.
News First with the people.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe met with foreign envoys today.
New Zealand High Commissioner Michael Appleton, Australian High Commissioner David Hawley and Canadian High Commissioner David McKinnon met with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today.
I held talks with envoys and representatives of many friendly nations. Their response was favorable. We will have to inform these countries about our current situation and enter into the relevant agreements. This is already taking place with India. It will take about 2 or 3 months to complete this process.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa met the ambassadors of many countries today. EU Ambassador Denis Scheibe, German Ambassador Holger Schubert, French Ambassador Elik Lavatu, Dutch Ambassador Tanja Gong-Grief, Italian Ambassador Rita Manella and the Romanian Ambassador met the opposition leader. During the discussion, which focused on the current crisis faced by the country, the opposition leader requested their support for Sri Lanka's progress.
US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chang, met with Janata Vimukti Peramuna leader Anuru Kumara Disanayake today. The envoy said she discussed the most urgent challenges Sri Lankans are facing.
The Irrigation Department warns of minor floods around the Kalu River in Ratnapura and Bulat Sinhala. Its Director of Disaster Management, SPC Sugeshwarao, said heavy rains are expected in those areas tonight. He requested people living in areas where floods are common to remain vigilant. In international news, at least 27 people have been killed in a fire at a building in the Indian capital of Delhi.
A fire had broken out at a 4-storied building in India's city of Delhi, leaving 27 dead and injuring many. More than 70 people were inside when the fire started, and witnesses said some jumped out of the windows to escape. A short circuit is thought to have started the fire. Two brothers who owned a CCTV manufacturing company, which was housed in the building, have been arrested. Indian officials said the building had not obtained the relevant clearance certificates.
Shifting your attention to some sports news, Sri Lanka cricket released its 12-member squad for the first test match that begins against Bangladesh in Chattogram. The match will begin at 10 a.m. tomorrow. This edition of Primetime News on TV1. For details of these stories and much more, simply log on to our website www.newsfirst.lk. I'm Martin Sathines, and for the News First, where the people come first. You take care and good night.